This episode of Recording Studio Rockstars is brought to you by Adam Audio, Isotope, Native Instruments, and Grace Design. You're hearing my voice right now through the Grace Design M201 Mark II mic preamp into the Empirical Labs EL8X distressor mixed through Isotope, RX, Ozone, Neutron, and Nectar, all on Adam Audio monitors. Please check out our awesome sponsors using the links in the show notes. It's a great way to help support this show, and we really appreciate it. Now, get ready to rock.
Sometimes the job is just communicating with the client and just talking to them on the phone. Get them on the phone. Chat with them. Find out where they're from and what their favorite sports team is. It doesn't even have anything to do with the song. And then you come back to the song and you're like, hey man, by the way, feel good about the shape of this thing? You know, whatever the puzzle might be, it's really based in communicating.
Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. Hey, rock stars. Yeah, you. I've got a secret to tell you. Want to know how I get a consistent sound mixing over 1,000 hours of recording studio rock stars? My secret is using Isotope, RX, Ozone, Neutron, Voice Enhancement Assistant, and Nectar to make sure every episode of this podcast sounds great. Right now, you are hearing RX breath control, declick, declip, DS, deplosive, voice denoise, ozone multiband compression, neutron EQ, VEA, and limiting, all from Isotope. Use the secret code ROCK10 to get 10% off or pick up the new Trash Light along with many of the other free cool plugins over at isotope.com. Are you struggling to make your mixes sound professional? If your tracks feel weak, distant, or lack punch and clarity, I've got the perfect solution. My free course, Mix Master Bundle. This course will teach you how to achieve pro-level mixes from your home studio using free and stock plugins in Pro Tools. But these techniques will work for you in any DAW, whether you use Logic, Cubase, PreSonus Studio One, Reaper, or another. If you're ready to make your best record ever, go to mixmasterbundle.com to get started now for free. Find the clickable link in the show notes of this episode. Hey Rockstars, it's your host, Lid Shaw, and welcome back to Recording Studio Rockstars, bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Dan Millice, a mastering engineer located in New York City with over 13 years of experience. During his career, Dan has been credited for mastering 11 Grammy-nominated projects. He recently mastered Terri Lyne Carrington's new album, New Standards Volume 1, which secured a Grammy win for Best Jazz Instrumental Album. And very excited to talk to Dan today. His records sound awesome. And Roxas, we have a link to that so you can go check out all this work we're talking about in the show notes. So please scroll down, click on that when you're ready to, and you can go listen to any of these records, maybe after you hear the podcast. So a big thank you and a shout out to Michael Estok and Jim Stewart for making our introduction. Thank you so much. Please welcome Dan Millice to Recording Studio Rockstars. Dan, are you ready to rock, my friend?
I'm ready.
Good to have you here, dude. So you're joining us from your studio right now, or you're joining us from kind of like the home setup, or what?
I am in Charlotte, North Carolina, visiting family. So
right on. So you got like the portable rig with you. Look at you go.
I got the mobile rig. Yeah, we flew out to LA on last Friday, did the Grammys, and then flew through Charlotte on the way back to New York just to spend a couple days with the family. And
dig. So when you do a portable rig, do you actually bring something that you could work off if you needed to?
Yeah, my mobile rig has really changed my life in terms of freeing me up and the flexibility I have, because I can provide a better service, a quicker service. So it's really like a laptop, an interface, some Odyssey headphones, and my iLock.
Which Odyssey headphones are the ones that you bring with you?
The MX4s. I went to Odyssey last Grammys in 2023, and they had me come by the warehouse where they build the headphones, and they showed me everything, and they were nice enough. Chris at Odyssey was really just so hospitable, and he had me come in, and he had a playlist built for me, and he had all the headphones laid out for me, and was just spent like an hour and a half with me just trying on the different headphones and listening to some records that I'd mastered that I knew really well.
Yeah.
And just that service and that extra, I don't know, just personal touch to it. I just felt so welcomed over there. And not to mention, I mean, now it's turning into an Odyssey commercial, but
that's all right.
I'm happy to do it. They're the best headphones to my knowledge.
So tell us a little bit about them, and just in case the rock stars aren't familiar. I mean, they may have heard the name, but they're unique the way they work. They're not like right here, I'm just wearing headphones. They're great. I think these are the KRKs.
Yep.
Forgot the model number, maybe 8400 or something like that. And I use them a ton in the studio for recording. But mine are a traditional, little speaker cone that's a driver in there. And yours with the Odysseys, they function a little differently, right?
Yeah, definitely. So most of their models, if not all of their models, are open ear models. And actually,
so that when you do the open ear thing, Rockstars, just means it's like ported in the back. Like you could, if you were cranking up a click track and you were recording into a microphone, that microphone's going to hear the click track and hear the music coming through them too.
Yep.
Are you actually using your open backs right now for this interview, or are you using a closed back pair?
I'm actually using some HD 600s by Sennheiser for this.
Which those are closed back, right? Or no?
They're open.
Are they?
They're open. Both are open. Yeah.
All right, keep my voice down in your headphones.
No, it's all good. But before,
if I get really loud, I'll hear myself back. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no, I before I was with wearing Odyssey headphones, I was using the Sennheiser HD 600s.
Yeah,
and those, to my knowledge, have always been a really nice flat translating headphone. And so I was going to be translating from the HD 600s to the Odysseys. And when I went and tried out the various models that they have, and I'm pretty sure they're all open ear. I could be mistaken there. So not ideal maybe for tracking, but don't quote me on that. But I tried them all out, and I narrowed it down to like 2 pairs. I sort of went in my head thinking I was going to get the LCD X's because everyone talks about those.
Mm-hmm.
And I've worn them, and I borrowed my buddy Nikor's LCD X's and loved them. And I totally went in with that expectation of buying those. But the MX4s like blew me away. I just kept coming back to the MX4s. And to take it a step further, they even tried out all the different cables that they have. They have the standard cable, they have a silver cable, they have a gold cable. And I totally could have just been hallucinating, but something about the silver cables and the MX4 combo just blew me away. And
that's pretty wild, man. And now
I bought those on site.
So the Odyssey headphones, they are like electrostatic drivers or something, right? So they don't actually have a moving coil. They have like a vibrating plane, I think.
Yeah, and it is an investment, but it's well worth it. If you're using headphones every single day, it's just so worth it. I am joyous about my MX4s and the case they come in. I can get on an airplane. I can have my briefcase with my RME interface and my laptop and my mouse and my iLock, and I can get on a plane. I can fly anywhere. I can plug into anybody's room.
Right.
I can master.
But you wouldn't be able to, I mean, you wouldn't actually be able to, I mean, if you wore them on a plane, it'd still be pretty noisy on a plane. They're not going to do noise canceling and all that kind of stuff.
No. Yeah, I'm not like working on the plane per se,
Right.
but just in terms of being mobile and untethered is important to me.
No, I think it's great. I think it's great. And so it's just a laptop interface, high quality headphones, and then you've kind of got the tools you need when you're out and about traveling,
to service people. And, that's really the key thing is I need to be accessible. I need to be speedy, speed is important.
Yeah.
And, for instance, I was went to LA and I'm doing an album with this band called Shade. Awesome band. And really nice people too. And they're on a deadline, like their album needed to be turned in end of day, Monday after the Grammys. And they had like 3 little, hey, can we just drop in, can we just mute this tambourine or whatever it was? Like, can you just recall the exact settings and reprint it and upload it? And I wouldn't be able to do that without either an assistant back in New York waiting around,
right.
Which is another cost of doing business, or being mobile like this. And I just popped into the hotel lobby, busted out the thing, got on the Wi-Fi, downloaded the new mix, dropped it into my session, checked the recall, printed it, QC'd it, sent, and being able to service clients quickly is of huge value to me. The service that I dream of providing, the service that I would want as a customer, I need to be quick. And so it's just important to be able to do those little things. Oh, can you fade this out quicker? No problem. Pop it open, do the thing, replace the file, move on to the next.
Also, it's nice to make it easier on yourself, because then it's not so disruptive. Because we're always going to have that balance of, we want to be able to provide great service if we're working professionally in audio and work with clients. You want to be able to always, you want them to feel like you're always available. But on the other hand, you personally don't necessarily want to always be available, because we're always trying to find the life balance. So if you have a clever, simple setup where you can pop it open, you trust the headphones, you know how to get the sound you want, it makes it a lot easier to deliver on that thing quickly. Let me ask you this. With your portable setup, can you take a project from start to finish? Or is this more like you are working in the mastering studio and then you can do all the peripheral things from a portable setup?
Yeah, both. I can go into a studio in New York City, plug into their converters, play out of my computer, through their speakers in a room they are comfortable in a room that they know intimately. I can start an album from start to finish on it in my parents', spare bedroom if I had to. I'm in various phases of productions. So I start albums, I finish albums, I do the middle, all parts. Yeah. And it's all just in an attempt to provide the best service and keep the wait times down and, just stay in a kind of like a constant state of productivity while I'm in that space, and then be able to turn it off and also have that luxury of having some family time and having some personal time and having that life balance. It's important.
Yeah. So as a parent myself, I understand that your parents' spare bedroom is probably your old room where you started out recording anyway. So
yeah,
right back full circle. Well, let's back up. So this is cool stuff to get into, and we'll come back to it. But give us a little bit more introduction to who you are, Dan. I mean, I gave a very brief intro. Tell us a little bit about how you are. Give us like the brief arc of, getting interested in music to finding yourself, winning Grammys and having an incredible playlist of records that you've mastered.
Man, thank you, by the way. That was an awesome intro. So I grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I grew up thinking I was going to be the next Joe Perry, in lead guitarist in Aerosmith. Like that was my dream. I was going to be Joe Perry when I grew up.
Doodle doodle doodle.
Yeah, actually, man.
That's a little less. That's not so much Joe Perry. He didn't go doodle 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 though, does he?
That might be Rush or somebody, but yeah, no, I grew up like a rock kid and with like rock star aspirations, I think. Yeah. And I've heard so many people say the same thing on here, so forgive me if it sounds repetitive, but I grew up with that same dream, and my parents were so supportive of that. If I said I wanted to be first baseman for the Atlanta Braves, I'm going to baseball camp this summer. They were like the most supportive. And if I said I want to go be a rock star, I'm getting put into music classes and guitar lessons. And I mean, I didn't have a need for anything. If I needed it, I had the privilege of getting it. And that's great. And that's definitely a leg up I have, just by circumstance. I have like the most supportive family. But, when I realized that I wasn't going to be first baseman for the Atlanta Braves, it was like, all right, yeah, let's, music, let's do this. Like, so I went to Appalachian State University, go Mountaineers, in Boone, North Carolina, about 2 hours. Yeah, I know. I had a great intern from there too. Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Patrick Boyd.
Oh, okay. All right.
AKA cool. PB and the Jam.
Nice. Yeah. App State. I'm very proud to have gone to Appalachian State, and they have a great music program there, and it's a state school. So, I still had to take English. I still had to take math. I got a bachelor's degree and I guess a bachelor's of science in music is what I think it is. And my focus was music industries, recording and production.
So you were doing the guitar thing, prior to college, and then by the time you hit college, it's like, all right, I don't think I'm going to be Joe Perry, so I'm
not the next Julian Lage, so maybe I should. Yeah, like so just do what you can to get into the music school. And
what drew you to the tech side of it?
That's a great question. My dad bought me like a little 4-track, little mini disc recorder. And all through high school and with my bandmate, I was in a band in high school called the Jalapenos.
Nice.
And we would like record covers or demos or whatever on my little mini disc.
I had a good
like
friend,
an SM58 or something like that.
Yeah, I had a good buddy, Brian Carter, who he rocked the mini disc 4-track or 8-track or something. And he just swore by that thing. I think he'd do his mixes to it for a while. And it was pretty it was more impressive than you would anticipate,
Yeah, absolutely. And it was digital. So it's like, you're learning mixing down and bussing down your 3 tracks down to the 1. So it's still the same like analog tape principles that you would learn doing it, but also transferring it to the computer and doing digital editing. And I don't remember what my first DAW was. I was trying to think of it. I think it was Samplitude.
Oh yeah. Wow.
You remember that? And I would dump them into the computer on my dad's work computer, like I didn't have a computer, and mess with them, like add reverb and mess around. And that became probably my biggest hobby. Like every day after school, I just go into my room and live my dream of like, I'm pretending I'm in a recording studio, and, just my imagination of like, this is awesome. I want to do this for real someday. That would be cool. My dad took me and my bandmates into a real recording studio here in Charlotte, and we recorded an album like in a day. We rehearsed
Amazing.
we rehearsed a ton and went in there with actually pretty prepared. And that experience was such an amazing experience for me in my history. And Jamie Hoover engineered those sessions. He's sort of a Charlotte. I mean, he is a legend in Charlotte. And so I just got to witness like the behind the scenes. And I'd always been busting open CDs, and the first thing I do once I could finally get the saran wrap removed, and all the tape and sticky stuff, I would just open up the booklet and read, wow, Electric Lady Studios. Oh, Sterling Sound. I would just read the studio personnel like, I don't know any of these names. And then eventually you keep reading it long enough and you start to see some familiar faces. And you're like, oh, wow, that guy did Aerosmith. And, like you start to see familiar names. And I was fascinated by that. And my technical fascination, I just was like, man, maybe I don't want to be a first baseman for the Atlanta Braves. Like maybe I want to be in the CD book, Well,
it's so funny because there was actually, it was maybe it was like the third baseman for the Atlanta Braves or something, was also a musician. And I think he built a studio here in Nashville, and I ended up with his speakers. But there was also the guy that I recorded at Bonnaroo. So apologies. I don't have all the names at my fingertips, but.
No, it's okay.
Yeah. There you go. The musician who wants to be a baseball star and decides to stick with music, and then is a baseball star.
I actually think I know who. Was it Chase Darno?
Yes, Chase. I did record at Bonnaroo at my studio down there.
Dude. Yeah, because the crazy thing, sidebar, and you may totally want to cut this out, but he was with the team. He left the team to go play Bonnaroo. And
that was it. Yeah, my fault. My fault, baseball fans. Sorry about that.
And we were because I'm a big Braves guy, and I was like, how did he get permission to leave the team to go play his like set at Bonnaroo and then come back in the middle of baseball season with no injury? Wow. This guy is scheduled to play against the Cincinnati Reds at 1 p.m. and he is in Manchester, Tennessee on the whatever stage. I thought that was hilarious.
That's funny.
Yeah, that's cool that you worked with him. That's so
fun. But I mean, I did recorded a ton of bands at my Bonnaroo studio, the Haybell studio, awesome. And those guys came through during one of those sessions. Forgot what year it was. Some around 2017, 18, 19, maybe.
Yeah, that feels right.
No matter what style of music you create, Native Instruments provides you all the instruments you need, from drums, loops, and beats to vintage and modern synthesizers, realistic strings, guitar amps, and futuristic synth pads. I really enjoy recording real bands in my studio, but then adding amazing overdubs from Contact, Massive X, Super 8, Battery, Guitar Rig, or Hybrid keys. Use the code ROCK10 to get 10% off or get complete start for free today with a bundle of 2,000 sounds and 6 gigs of samples at nativeinstruments.com. Yeah, so very cool, man. So mini disc, and then you did the school thing. Now, jump us forward a little bit. How'd you end up in New York City mastering?
Yeah. So basically part of that program, it is required to do an internship. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about the way the Appalachian State Hayes School of Music works is they not only encourage it, they require, it is a requirement. It's like the last 18 semester hours of your degree. So you have to do it. And, I looked at Nashville, I looked at LA, and I looked at New York, and I love all three of the names listed, but something about New York really called me, and ironically, none of my classmates were going to New York. I was the only, me or maybe one other person went to New York, and everybody else from App State went to Nashville. So I'm actually not surprised to hear that you have bumped into some App State kids.
Yeah.
But
well, of course, we're
New
closest. We're a drive, New York's
absolutely.
A drive, I suppose, too, just a longer one.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I had put some feelers out, and the studio that had given me the most promise. Now, I didn't have an internship offer. I had no offers. A couple of studios. I'm not going to tell you the name of the studio, but one of the studios, this is like one of my dream studios. The lady picks up. She's like, where'd you go to school? Or she didn't have that accent, but she's like, where'd you go to school? And I said, Appalachian State. And she's like, never heard of it. Click,
Oh, man.
And 2 years later, I did sessions with them, and the album got Grammy nominated. And
wow.
I was just like, wow, this is so ironic. But yeah, the studio that gave me the most promise, they were like, come in when you get to New York. And so I got to New York, and that studio was Masterdisc.
Oh, cool. Right on.
So that's where, those were the toilets I cleaned and the trash cans that I emptied. And, that's like essentially where my first real life New York studio experience was. And it was tremendous. I mean, I learned a ton there, and realized that I love the mastering process. I love finishing. Something that, and maybe this is a type A thing, or I don't know what it is, but I hate leaving things unfinished.
Right.
I love to finish stuff, and having that background in recording studios where you're like, yeah, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. We're going to do the overdubs, or whatever. It's like, and what else we got to do? It's nothing's ever done.
Yeah.
Whereas in the mastering, I'm seeing these guys like they're champions, and they're celebrated, and and I'm seeing the clients, the relief in their faces, and they want to like pop a bottle and celebrate. It's like all come down to this. And, something about that combination of, this is where you come to finish a record.
Mm-hmm.
Like at the end of the day, you're going to walk out with this little CD, because we were still burning off reference CDs and stuff.
Right. Not mini discs, though. You weren't sending people home with mini discs.
Right. And they're walking out with a physical copy of their master to listen and approve, and something about that was so attractive to me, and maybe serves my personality type maybe better than mixing or recording, which I
Rockstars, just to paint a picture, Dan has a very well-groomed beard and well-coiffed hair. He's definitely somebody who pays attention to detail. I'd be so lucky to have. I did have a beard. Mine was not well-groomed. It was a little all over the place.
I appreciate it. I'm blushing. But yeah, and so that I just decided that was what I wanted to do, and I became passionate about it. I just started learning about it, and you start you start by QCing albums. Mm-hmm. So as the albums get finalized, they'll kind of ring you in and say, intern, come enter the room, and here's a CD. Will you listen to it from start to finish? That's sort of where it started, and the ear training.
That's such a great place to start, really. It's like it's a reverse learning process. It says you need to begin by listening to the end and determining product. if you hear something that is not correct.
Absolutely. And you're doing multiple things simultaneously. Like you're doing them a favor because they want you to listen for little pops and ticks and dropouts and errors in the optical media.
Yeah.
CDs aren't all built perfectly. Some CDs, you could burn a CD and not know that it's messed up until after you send it to the client. So I'm learning like 5 different lessons at the same time. Like, attention to detail and quality checking your work, relentless, obsessive quality control. Because once it leaves here, it's out there.
It's funny. You talk about CDs, and it's true. There was this physical aspect. So there was plenty of possibility for the CD to physically go wrong when it was created. And I remember going through the process. I'm like, you do all this work, you get to the end, and then you're about to send something off for duplication. And, I remember talking to my mastering engineers, like, well, how do we know that what we're sending off is right? And it was like, well, you need to critically listen through this last copy one more time, and he would offer to do it at mastering. But of course you would pay extra for that time potentially, or whatever, In other words, I learned that same thing where it's like, when you're done, you're not done until you've signed off on the thing. And the funny thing is, you move forward now, we don't really use CDs like we did. It's digital, but it happens just with a digital file too, Yeah,
we're still QCing, even though we're very rarely issuing a physical media. We're very rarely asked to send anyone a CD. And if they do ask, I sort of, are you sure? Like, sure. Can't I send you something else?
You need me to send you a CD player too?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, where are you going to put it? Like, I'll wait.
Yeah, let me put a stick. I remember going through the studio branding process of figuring out how to have CD labels, stickers, and print them, and then put them on the CDs that I burn. I was like, oh, this is so cool. We're so badass. Until that first one got stuck in somebody's car player, right? Because the sticker came off, and then it's like, oh my God, I can never.
It's like not a good look, right?
Not a good look.
No, user experience is important, right? Like it needs to be frictionless, and CDs just asking for another potential speed bump or a potential thing that could go wrong. Also, not to bring this is sort of grim, but like, back in 2010, there was this really gnarly tsunami in Japan. And Taiyo Yuden, if I'm mispronouncing that, please forgive me.
No, that's how I remember it. Taiyo Yuden, yeah.
Yeah, they were top tier in the CD
world. They were the
world.
ones you wanted.
That's who we always bought the CDs from. And they, had this natural disaster that shut them down for like a long time. And so we were, there was a time where we're like, damn, are we really going to Office Depot and buying a spool of CDs to get us through the end of the week? And those CDs, no disrespect to them, but they weren't Taiyo Yuden CDs, right. And so we were getting more errors than usual. And I remember when Apple started to kind of dead the CD, they stopped putting CD drives in their laptops, and cars stopped having CD play. It took time, but I love swapping. How they sound, but it's just, it's just an extra thing to have to ship, an extra thing to have to package, an extra thing to have to label. I
remember when my laptop, which had the CD drawer in it, when I opened it up and I modified it to remove the CD player and put a second hard drive in there. Awesome. I still got that laptop, 2012 one.
Yeah.
Well, very cool. So you start out with the quality control and the mastering, and you're learning to identify quality. So now, the cool thing about that is then as you learn, well, okay, how do we get to this level of quality? Now you're learning how, what your finish line might look like. Now here's how you get there.
Yeah. And once you can kind of show your studio or facility, whatever, place you're interning at, that you're competent enough to, catch stuff, or, show that you're responsible enough to hang, I guess, for lack of a better word, then you might get invited in to observe some sessions. Then you might get invited to maybe even set up a session before, show up an hour early and make sure all the, download the files ahead of the time, and quality quality checking your source material. That's a whole nother thing where, you don't want the person you're assisting to sit down and be like, why are 2 of these songs an MP3 file and 3 of these songs are 96K and 2 of these songs are 48, and why is it, and you sort of have to adapt to the person that you're assisting as well. But those kind of clairvoyant things that you kind of need to be a few steps ahead and prepping, then you start to drift into that world, which is like assisting and apprenticing. And that's maybe where you learn a ton about, the workflow and how are we notating our settings and how are we labeling our files. And I might use 2 different EQ settings on the same song, and so we have to do a pass, and this is all in the analog world. So you have to print a pass with EQ A or EQ 1 and then another pass of EQ 2, and how is he labeling those 2 and how's he archiving, just all the data that is kind of being created and saved, and just kind of like running with the engineer and kind of following them, but also being a couple steps ahead of them and behind at the same time. It's like kind of a meticulous dance in a way.
Well, and it's funny because when we listen to that, we might think, well, file naming's cool and all, but what does that have to do with making records? And the truth is, it has a lot to do with it, because the whole, at the core of making records well means keeping careful track of where you are in the process. In other words, you're right now here with the sound, and you're going to try and make the sound better with your next move. And then from there, you'll probably try and improve on it. And it's an iterative process through mixing, through production, through mixing, through mastering even. And if you can't remove the distraction of being in a state of self-doubt because you're not sure, well, which one did we do? And which mix are you talking about? Which one are you listening to? Then you'll never really be able to move forward with your process.
Exactly. It's critical. A guy that I assisted at one point, he called it, I don't know if this is what most people probably don't call it this, but data husbandry. And it's nice. Just like the practice, it's like running a farm, you're working a farm, right? And it's like, you got to keep everybody, organized. It's similar in a way. It's like everything. I don't want to be guessing what this is. I don't want to have to, make it as frictionless as possible. This is a 48K file. It's 24-bit. It's the main version, or it's the radio edit version. Today's date, the song name, the artist name.
Was there anything ever called Final?
It's funny you say that. Like, I joke with my buddies about this all the time. Like, we want to call something like Final for real this time. Snare drum up, no, we avoid that word. But
let me ask you a question related to that. So whatever our naming scheme is, and whether we're producing or sharing rough mixes, or we're in the mix stage, or we're moving on to mastering, what have you learned about the way to make sure that your client is listening and giving you feedback, and they're listening to you both know which version they're listening to, and you're responding to the correct version of that?
Yeah, it starts with, organizing and having kind of a formula for my file naming that is consistent throughout the process. This is track 1. Artist name, song title, version, main, radio edit, TV, clean, acapella, whatever. Mastered, sample rate, bit depth, date. And I do that on every file I send out. It is like that is my system. And one service that I have to shout out is Samply.
Right.
I have just met them about half a year ago. I met them at AES. I went and talked to them, and just like the nicest guys, young guys. And they have this platform called Samply. And I truly feel like it's made my life and my clients' lives much more improved. I don't know, like they've made it really easy to, on the client customer experience side of things, I send them a folder and they know exactly what it is. It's labeled perfectly. You can stack files on top of each other and it says version 2, version 3, version 4. Take it a step farther. If you expand those and you can see all the master 1, master 2, master 3, master 4, you can switch between them in real time. So they might be in the car doing the car test to version 4, and they're like, yeah, this does have a little less low end, but it'd be cool to be able to hear version 3 so I could compare.
Yeah.
And it doesn't start the song over. It keeps you right where you are in the song. So now you're able to do a proper A-B, which is what I'm doing constantly all day, is just A-Bing. They're able to do that too from wherever they are, from the tour bus. So it makes their lives easier. It makes my life easier. It makes the service I provide better. And I am rocking with Samply. That is,
that's cool.
And the price is awesome. And you can put your logo on it, and it's just, there's an app, it's awesome.
Adam Audio celebrates 25 years of designing industry-leading monitors in Berlin by unveiling the Arctic White A4V and A7V monitors, available for a limited time. With the XART ribbon tweeter design, customizable speaker voicings, and SonarWorks integration for room correction, these monitors deliver professional-grade sound perfect for Grammy-winning producers and home studios. Make your studio cooler than cool with the Arctic White A4V and A7V, available for a limited time with the standard extended 5-year warranty at adamaudio.com. So a couple of things. One is they're great. I use it all the time, and I've talked about them a bunch on the show. I use it at each stage of record making. Mm-hmm. I use it a ton at the creation stage, where the guys I'm working with in the studio, for songwriting, we're uploading the demos first, and then as soon as there's a rough mix after we track it, that just becomes a new version right over the top of the demo. Now you can even listen to the demo. I've got the rough mix there. As I continue doing overdubs and work on it, I can go back and listen to the rough again and be like, oh my God, the drums were so huge in the rough. What did I do? How did I lose that as I tried to improve it? And right. And it's great to have the back and forth. The commenting feature is really great when I'm at that stage for mix notes with people.
Yep.
And just the organization and the player is really cool. It's fun to have a dedicated image for each project while I'm working on it. And it sounds great. There are a couple of quick points I should make. One is, you mentioned price. So Rockstars, if you do, so they got a great free version you can check out. And then if you decide to get it, you should be able to use the coupon RSR20 and you get 20% off. So that will hopefully help you out too.
Sick.
But you can go a long ways with the free version. You won't run out for a while. It's like early Dropbox. Remember, we would just get it and everybody be on the free version until you finally we're running out of space.
Like, you're running out of space. You're running you get tired of seeing that. I haven't run out of space yet. And and you can there's another function that I personally think is so cool. The auto delete after 90 days.
Right. That as a mastering guy, that's real critical, I know.
Oh my gosh. I mean, and I don't mind if
So what does it mean though? Explain what that means.
Yeah, like after 90 days, it's going to go away. The files are going to self-destruct. And
why would you want that? Somebody's listening and they're going, what the hell are you talking about? Why would you want to self-destruct your files?
Well, for me, like, I'm not a hosting service, and I'm not charging for that. I'm not I want you to get your files, but I'm not agreeing to host your files forever. You
Right.
know,
You're trying to deliver them. You're trying to hand them over like handing over CD.
And we could discuss that. Like if that was a service that was needed, I don't think it is, but if it was, I probably know. But I'd be open to discussing that with a client, but it's just not part of what I provide. I'm not providing lifelong file hosting. You know, I have a bunch of files on a server from 2010. So I keep archives locally.
We first crossed this bridge when it was things like Dropbox, when you try and like send somebody the folder, there you go. Mm-hmm. And then they come back later and they're like, do you have the, or you didn't know if you're like, did you download the thing that I sent you?
Did you approve
you didn't
this?
Know.
Yeah.
And then you're like having to make a decision later to delete it. And it was always very stressful in the studio. So that's what you're talking about, right? Is that ability to turn over a project. They've had it for 90 days to listen to it, download it.
Yeah.
With something like Samply too, I think that it's like a button click and they just add it to their own.
Yeah, it's so easy.
Samply account and they keep it themselves.
You can do whatever. I can turn it on. I can turn it off. It's just, I think 90 days is a great window of time to give someone to download their masters. The other function that I know other people have, other file sharing services have this now, but you almost have to have it today, is the being able to lock downloads, and unlock downloads. Yep. So for instance, I will get a file from a band in Buenos Aires, and they hire me for a single and it's like $150, and I do their single. And I want them to be able to listen to the master, but I struggle sometimes with the idea of invoicing people in advance. I want them to hear this thing and love it and want to pay. I want them to be excited about it, but I want it to be stress-free. I don't want them to be like, we just paid $150 and we've never even met this guy. Our buddy told us about him, but every project is different. Anyways, being able to let the client listen to it stress-free. But also, I know I'm protected from them just downloading the file and peace out, Dan. Thanks for the song. Now, this doesn't happen. Generally, people are good, and the people that recommend me as mastering, I know these people. We've worked together. No, it's generally not a problem, but it's easier for me to get paid quicker if I can just lock the file from download and it's like, hey, Dan, we want to download. We love the master. Cool. Here's the invoice. My studio's policy is this. And once it's paid, it automatically unlocks, and that's me checking the thing manually. It's, I'm doing this in real time. But when I see that Zelle on my cell phone ding and it's the indie band from Buenos Aires, I'm like, cool. Go on Samply, unlock the file, and they can download it right away. And it's streamlined and it's frictionless. And I'm not offending anyone. Everyone I've done that to is totally understanding in it. And so just that, the file architecture, the ease of use, the actual interface itself is easy. I could send my mom a Samply link and she would be able to navigate it. So it's just. I really like it. So.
So one other thing I was going to add, though, it also has built-in level matching, so it can mimic the level that Spotify will play the mixes at or the masters at, which is very, very helpful. Mm-hmm. However, that doesn't yet work on iOS. So,
okay.
If volumes might sound slightly different in the car. Yeah. But it does work on the computer. And I find it mind-blowing, the experience of being able to instantly compare where I was yesterday and what the mix is now. And it's very revealing. So I like it a lot.
Game changer.
I like it.
Absolute game changer.
Not to just, we don't have to turn this into a Samply ad necessarily.
Just talk about Samply.
Yeah. Well, that process though, Rockstars, that process of setting up a way for yourself to compare what you did yesterday to what you're doing today with a single button click. and have them be level matched is really a crucial part of mixing. It's a crucial part of mastering. I think it's a great part of production, even just comparing rough mixes of things. Even my rough mixes go from sounding better to worse when I've done lots of work to improve something at times, and you want to know that. You want to know if you're making it better or not,
Yeah, producers can use it. Engineers can definitely use it. I mean, executives can use it for sharing stuff, that they don't want it floating around.
Right. That's the other part I was
going to watermark it. That's
the other part I was going to add.
Yeah.
Is it's having this private player that you have control over is a really cool feature for pre-release. Before you've released the album, you can have a version of the finished album to start sharing with people so they can hear it, but it's private,
Yeah.
I think you can, I can't remember whether you can permission the listener. I don't know if it prevents them from sharing the link with their friend and listening, but the point is you can create custom players and all that kind of stuff, and you can turn it on, turn it off. I do the download lock too. If I'm working with a client and they got the rough, but they haven't paid the invoice yet, I don't want to stress everybody out right then and there, but It's easy to just, the invoice is paid now. Great. Flip over, hit the download, enable, and there it is. Another tool that helps with this sort of comparing things that, which maybe is worth mentioning, because I think it's helpful both in mixing and mastering, is like Metric AB on Plugin Alliance is a really good one. Reference from Mastering the Mix is another one that does that. Sonic's Listen Hub does a version of that, but setting up these abilities to instantly compare what you're doing. Maybe you can talk about that too. I think that's critical in mastering, but educating us on this idea that our audio memory is like a goldfish, even shorter, right? Like if we listen to one thing and then there's too much of a space between listening to the next thing, our brain resets really quickly.
Yeah, I think it goes both ways. I think if you A/B something too quick, have you ever noticed, like, if you A/B something super quick and you're just going do 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 do, like it totally blends together and you're like, yeah, this is consistent.
Oh, whereas interesting.
It's something, and I don't know how our brains are wired, but it's something, where if you do the A/B too fast, you start to, I think you need to give your ear a little time for like the rarefaction to play out, the pressure to come off of the eardrum and then start it back up. So you sort of need like, there's like a sweet spot of like, a second or something between what you're A/Bing. But what you were saying is, 5 minutes from now, I'm like a different guy. I might hear this totally different. And I think it's important to do little breaks. Like naturally you're printing a song and you have to sit there while the song prints start to finish. You're like kind of QCing it. Maybe you turn it down. Maybe you hit the dim. Save your ears a little bit. But also what you're doing is giving yourself a little perspective. And I'll like go microwave a coffee, come, go in the kitchen, come back, hit play at the volume. I always listen to the same volume. And it might feel different. And it's like, why does it feel different? I didn't alter my state while I was gone. All I did was microwave a coffee.
Right.
And
I didn't microwave my mix.
Yeah, I didn't whatever. So it's interesting, but it's good not to A/B too quickly. You definitely want to A/B with like a little space, but yeah, you can hear things differently in short periods of time,
That's a great insight on your part.
Phenomenon.
You mentioned I listen at the same level. So can you talk about your listening levels and what does that mean? I've heard mastering engineers really focus on this, and I'd love to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I kind of start my day listening to stuff I know sounds awesome. And I got that because I saw the guys doing that at the studio I was interning at. You know, they come in, they're kind of warming up the gear, haven't taken their coats off. They're like flipping all the switches, turning stuff on. They like put a record on and they know sounds really great, you know, kind of warming your ears up for the day. I do the same thing, but I always have it at the same volume. And I pull up something and I put it at a level that I find comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, yeah, if I was listening to music all day and this was the finish line, this is a nice listening volume. So I couldn't tell you. And every room is, you know, I might be in a different room someday and it be a different level because of the physics of that acoustical environment or whatever.
Right.
But generally in my own studio, which is out of the house, I am always putting my volume at the same level every day. And that is my finish line volume. And if I'm listening to, you know, if I go and reference a Dua Lipa song or something because I'm doing something disco-y or poppy and I want to reference something that sounds really great, you know, I pull it up and I'm at the same volume all day long. I've told people, I kind of compare it to like the free throw line almost, you know, in basketball. It's like you're in the gym, like you shoot a million free throws. You get to the point where, you know, Michael Jordan closes his eyes and nails a free throw. Like he's not even looking. He literally closed his eyes, shot one and made it.
Yeah.
Because he did it like a billion times, you know, his muscle memory or whatever it is. So I kind of, you know, just think about it like that. I just don't want to be trying to hit a moving target, you know, in the dark.
Yeah.
It's like I'm trying to make my life easier too, you know, so that I can do a better job and provide a better service.
So that target, that listening level, if I say that back to you, because you might be in some slightly different studio locations or settings, you might begin the day by finding out like, what's my comfort level listening to a finished record or a finished reference. And then that becomes, it doesn't really matter whether that was 2 clicks or 1 click or 3 clicks today in this studio. It just means that's the baseline.
Exactly.
So that becomes your target. And then when you're in headphones, that's probably somewhat more consistent because it's always the same rig. And it's just sort of the same idea, just like what's comfy.
Exact same thing. And I know exactly on my DAC what level I like it at. And I always have it at that level. And it could be, you know, it could be different, like you said, in different rooms.
What about different styles of music that you're working on? I mean, is it, because that's part of the questions I wanted to jump into too. I mean, you do stuff like, you know, rock, indie rock, pop stuff, a lot of hip hop and deep bass material. Mm-hmm. And one of the questions I had for you was, I actually got a lot of bass questions, but one of the questions was, and I don't even know if I can find it that fast, but oh yeah, right here. MASN, Strawberry Hurricanes, huge low end on that. And it's that, I think it's if I recall, it's sort of that steady moving note choice, 808 kind of stuff. And when I was in the studio, I listened to the car first and I'm like, man, this stuff sounds great. The low end's just killing it, you know, and just, I'm sure you're happy to hear that, but and this was in a Tesla. So really bumping in the Tesla, making the stereo sound great. Nice. And my next thought was like, got to go down to the studio and listen on the mix monitors and like, what would my experience be there? Because music with a lot of bass into it, I feel like there's an element of this has got to feel right to know that it sounds right. And so I thought, well, I wonder what feels right is in the studio for this style of music. Cause I'm usually, you know, I'm anything from a banjo to an electric guitar to a drum set, you know, not as much of that. So then I found that I noticed for the real sub stuff that I was hearing in the car, I found, I got to turn this up a little bit more in the studio. It's like the Fletcher Munson curve expands a little maybe. And I wondered if you pay attention to that, do your headphones give you the sub stuff that you feel from the sub in the car? Does that change where your comfort listening level is? Is it a little louder for that material or not?
I leave it at the same regardless. And what I do is I have these conversations with the producers. And I think that is incredibly important. Like, not just having a personal connection, but finding out their vision for it and whether or not being the loudest thing on that playlist or is important to them, or is it not important to them? And then we get into the physics lesson that comes after that, which is, if you want to be the loudest thing on Spotify, we can try, but we must compromise. And what we are going to have to compromise first is low end, because low end swallows up your headroom very quickly. Very aggressive low end is not going to give us the room that we need to squeeze in all the information that we need to hit that target of loudness that they are hoping to hit. So it's like having those conversations ahead of time. In terms of like the mastering process, I do so much listening outside of, I'll do 4 different passes with 4 different limiters, and I'll take that and go listen in the car, or go listen at the house, or go listen in the studio, or go listen in the living room, whatever.
That's
so I'm
awesome.
constantly critiquing myself even before it even gets to them. But, it's a combo of having that conversation with the client, kind of getting their expectations. And if they're willing to compromise some loudness, I'm not talking about turning it in really low, but just not being the loudest thing on Spotify that day. If they're willing to do that, we can get a really nice, fat, subby master. It's just you can't really, in my experience, have both things. I think it kind of defies physics a little bit. Those are kind of the only rules that we're limited by are the rules of physics. And so you can't really have both in my experience. And yeah, that's kind of like my opinion on it. I can push the needle, but if we push the needle, we're going to sacrifice some sub. And I don't think on that on the Mason thing specifically, it was important to be loud, but full low end and depth was more important. And so, yeah, it's not the loudest thing, but that was in correlation with the client and a conversation that we would have had.
Well, for my ear, it was plenty loud and it was turn upable, and that's the measure to me. Like if I'm going to reach for that volume knob and crankability
is important. Yeah.
I am really impressed with iZotope Ozone. I've been mastering many of my records recently, and Ozone makes it so easy to get a fantastic sound. The built-in mastering assistant helps by analyzing the mix and suggesting all the settings needed for a professionally mastered result based on the genre and EQ curve of your choice. You can even reference a specific song if you want, using simple yet sophisticated modules like clarity, impact, low-end focus, stabilizer, imager, exciter, and spectral shaping, along with powerful dynamic EQ, compression, and limiting. You just adjust the settings to your taste and it sounds incredible. And the magic of mastery balance means you can manipulate the level of the vocal, bass, and drums even at the mastering stage. Amazing. My bandmates are pretty demanding, but now when I send off the masters for approval, they absolutely love the way our records sound thanks to iZotope. Use the code ROCK10 to get 10% off Ozone or other tools like RX and Voice Enhancement Assistant, or grab any of the cool free plugins like the new Trash Lite at iZotope.com. What do songwriters, music producers, DJs, EDM artists, TV and film composers all have in common with you and me? We all need amazing sounds that instantly elevate our music to the desired style. That's why Native Instruments is your ultimate toolkit, offering a massive library of sounds for your studio. Whether you're into hip-hop, indie pop, classic rock, meditation music, dance beats, or orchestral arrangements, the Native Instruments Complete Bundle has it all. From drums, loops, and beats to synths, realistic strings, vintage bass, guitars, and keys, it's a comprehensive collection. I love recording real bands in my studio, but then enhancing the tracks with drum samples, synths, and futuristic keys from Battery, Contact, Massive X, Guitar Rig, and Hybrid keys, for example. It's a surefire way to make your productions sound modern and unique. Use the code ROCK10 to get 10% off or get Complete Start for free today, featuring 2,000 sounds and 6 gigs of samples at nativeinstruments.com. Howdy, rock stars. We're back now for the jam session, aka the second half of the show, aka give me a better name for it. And my guest today is Dan Millice, joining us from, well, he's not actually back in his studio in New York. He's joining us from Charlotte, North Carolina today. And but he's joining us from his portable studio, which is everybody's awesome as his studio. We'll probably talk more about that too. Dan, you ready to jam?
I'm ready.
All right, so let's stay on that topic for just a sec. You're talking about listening outside of the studio, and right now you are technically outside of the studio as far as the big fancy mastering studio goes. You've got your Odyssey headphones with you. You talked about going out to the car. What do you find useful as listening checks outside of your main studio monitors? What sort of things do you listen for? What are the indicators to you that a fix is still needed in something? And then on the other end of that question, how do you know when something's correct and done?
If I had to answer that in 2 words, it would be vocal level.
Love it, man.
For both. Vocal level. It's the vocal level from song to song has been my key indicator of, did I make this too loud, or did I make this not loud enough? Or in the situation where I'm mastering an album and all 10 songs need to be consistent, listening to vocal level is kind of the key indicator for me. If you do passive listening, so for instance, you're on a road trip with some people and you're driving down the highway and you have the volume down, not super loud, and you're all like kind of having a conversation, and your ears find, the vocal in one song, and then you're not really paying attention. It gets to another song, and if all of a sudden the vocal is like 3 clicks louder or 3 clicks less loud, or even maybe 1 click, your ears are going to, maybe your brain more so, are going to say like, why is that louder? Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of what my brain focuses on. And I think I actually learned that mastering hip hop albums, because the vocal is, I know vocal is important in all vocal music, but hip hop specifically, trying to get, the lead vocal to line up from track to track, especially in hip hop, because it's like 15 songs, you might have 15 different producers, 15 total different styles. And so what's the one thread I can kind of weave that will be consistent and kind of imply that it's well mastered, or imply that it's all done in the same place, even though it was done in 15 different places? The only way that I know is vocal level being consistent from track to track. And that is not genre biased in my experience, at least. That could be Indian folk music, or Turkish jazz, or hip hop from Atlanta, Georgia, or country music from Nashville, it really isn't genre specific. It's like
Yeah.
our brain. That's, I think, how our brains perceive like relative volume or perceived loudness.
Yeah.
And I don't know, in instrumental music, because I do a good bit of that as well, I kind of try to find what is the lead vocal in this.
Right.
So, I did this Lakeisha Benjamin album or the Terri Lyne Carrington, either of those albums. And you sort of find who's singing, who's singing in this. And so in Lakeisha's instance, it's like she's singing. She's the singer. It's a saxophone, let's like sit her up and let's try to let's like pretend that she's the vocalist, or a Julian Lage record. It's like he's singing, the guitar is the vocal in this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So whatever, it sort of is different on every project, obviously. But
rock records also, I mean, I think about this a lot. And at one point I remember it occurred to me, how do I determine, I think it's great what you talked about, like studying your own response to what you listen to in the car, because it's very educational. Because we'll have a quick reaction in the car, but until you pause to like pay attention to it and think like, why am I reacting like this? Why do I think this is right or wrong or loud or quiet or whatever? I started noticing that I wanted to crank things, and then maybe I'd try and crank it, and then it's like exploding, it's blowing up, it's not working or something. And then I'd think, what's my benchmark? And I sort of realized, well, I'm trying to crank it up to the point at which the mid-range hits me right. Or the mid-range hits me as loud enough. And then at that volume, I'm hoping that the top is just right and the bottom and the bass is sitting in the right space. And when you describe it with the vocal, I realized like, duh, mid-range is vocal.
Absolutely.
It's literally why our ears are shaped like that, is so that we can hear the human voice.
Yeah, so we can hear our moms calling us for dinner, or saying like, that's a dangerous thing. Don't do that dangerous thing, or whatever it is. The other thing is, go to the loud part, I do that in the mastering studio. I go to the loud part. I mean, obviously I'm listening to the whole song, but it's important for me to like do a few loops of the climactic section and kind of making sure it does that thing that you're describing, where you're like, yeah, this feels good at this volume that I listen to every day. Like it's shining the way that other thing that I listen to all the time shines, and then like going back, hitting rewind and going back and doing all right, well, like, let's check the intro, and like, let's make sure we get to that climactic thing, that the journey, that we ride this thing to the big climax, and making sure that translates. Like, that's a big part of the feeling thing that you were talking about. And the loud part is really where I do most of my checking, making sure that it doesn't hurt in that loud part. And then I go in the car and I confirm that, or maybe I missed something and, I have to come back, but at least I'm like, yeah, at a loud volume, and this is the climax, I feel comfortable turning this in. If it gets played in a noisy club on a sound system that's like kind of decrepit, is it still going to sound good there? Obviously it's going to sound good in the Tesla, obviously it's going to sound good on the Odysseys, but who else going to get to listen on these Odysseys, and like, we want it to translate through the iPhone,
Yeah. Talk about that. So what is, stuff. Do you listen to things on the iPhone speaker, and do you think that's relevant? And if you do, what are some telltale indicators that you would pick up on?
Yeah, only because clients have done that in the past. In my experience, it's typically younger clients, like clients that are teenagers, maybe. Like this is their first time. You know, a lot of kids, I guess, listen on their iPhone without headphones. I didn't know that, but when I found that out, I started to check it for sure. And again, it's vocal centric. It's like that meat of the frequency response of an iPhone. It's all in that like 500 hertz there, you know, 500 hertz to 1K, 2K, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's where all the information is. So like, obviously you're not going to check low end on it, you know, and if the vocal is too much, you're feeling that on the iPhone because it's like swallowing up everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And now I know that if you're mixing, you might learn things like, well, you can hear the bass on the big speakers, but how are you going to hear the bass or the kick on the iPhone speaker too? And then you start learning things like, well, you can add a little bit of harmonic saturation to bring out the perception of the bass without actually turning it up loud. Because you can turn bass up loud enough to you start hearing it on an iPhone speaker, but then you go back to the big speakers and you're like, whoa, it's way too loud, you know? So it's a balancing act. Does that same thinking apply at the mastering stage? And do you perform those similar tricks and balancing acts? Or is that an example of something that kind of needs to get solved at the mix stage before mastering? And I guess the extension of that question is, what other things need to get solved at mixing before mastering?
Yeah.
You want it? I can start giving you easy questions if you prefer.
No, that's great. Yeah. And remind me the second part when I.
Yeah, I will. Yeah. It's just like, is bass something and hearing it on a small speaker something that's part of solving at mastering? Or is it for the mix to be solved? And then what else needs to be solved in the mix before?
Yeah, 100%. I will say all problems are best solved in mix. Not like I'm passing buck. It's just that's just like how the world works.
Yeah.
It's just always better to fix it there, low end, top end, everything. But you know what I was gonna say is it's funny, in low end specifically, you know, sometimes boosting top end will make your low end sound better.
Right.
You know, like there are some quirky things that you kind of learn in mastering. And you're like, oh, I think this might be one of those quirky things that they talk about in mastering. You're like, yeah, why is boosting 30K? How is boosting 30K going to help my low end? Try it sometime. Cause, you know, and it blew my mind, kind of learning that like opening up the top can actually allow these harmonics to kind of shine a little better and give you a better sounding, full spectrum of audio. So, my gut instinct, you know, if a client came and we're like, can we just add a little extra down there? I'm not grabbing for the 30K band on the EQ. I'm just saying sometimes when you have it really close to approving and you're like doing the car test or the AirPod test or whatever it is, and you get your notes and you're like putting it all into perspective. Sometimes it's not the most obvious thing. And I've gotten really good results from, I'll just use this as an example. If you have like an issue or a buildup or like a node or something somewhere and you're like, damn, it's like 500 hertz or whatever. Very rarely do I go to 500 hertz and cut there. And I don't know why. I can't tell you why that is the case, but it's like, that is not what sounds good. And it definitely doesn't sound natural. So sometimes you have to find, you should know about octaves, how octaves work and how harmonics work. And that even numbered harmonics typically sound better than odd numbered harmonics. And we don't have to like get into necessarily like the science of it necessarily, but knowing that they exist and knowing that you're going to hear things and doing the math and going like 400 hertz to 8K, to 800 hertz to 1.6K to 3.2K to 6.4K, you know, and you're just kind of doing those octaves in your head, those those whole number harmonic changes and knowing like, this one kind of harsh. And I don't need to tell anyone this, but I'm willing to bet that's an odd numbered harmonic of this key that we're in. I'm not going into the mastering studio with a guitar tuner necessarily and being like, yeah, this song's in B flat. I'm not doing that. That is not my thing at all. But knowing that, having that like foundation and knowing that, and also the experience of like, the problem seems to be around 500 hertz, but actually by changing the level of the 500 hertz, I'm actually making it worse. So sometimes it's actually like, let's raise something around that area. And that actually kind of gives us this perception of the balance change that we're looking for, or let's go around it and cut something. And that all of a sudden changes the weight of it, coming out of the headphone or the speaker or whatever you're working on. So that is a big brain balance thing that I think about often. Maybe not as formally as I just described it, but.
No, that's cool. That's cool. When you're making odd changes like that, do you take advantage of, plugins having the A, B, C, D comparison buttons and all that kind of stuff? Are you constantly, do you find it useful to make a move and then compare moves to each other so that you're listening for, incremental, this is better kind of things?
Obsessively.
Maybe talk about that process so we can begin to understand it. And maybe, I'd say a majority of the rock stars listening now, of course, are home studio people making records, trying to get a mix to sound great, maybe also mastering. But, even in those processes of comparing parts, comparing production decisions in a mix or comparing mix changes and, plug-in adjustments to things, what can we learn about how to do that A/B comparison listening?
Yeah, it's crucial. And also it's very good for ear training. So I get asked that a lot too. And this will go with your question, but like people ask me about ear training and the best way to do ear training just by doing the thing, but A/B, like mute it, unmute it, mute it, unmute it. To answer your question, like all my favorite, it's very frustrating if I like fall in love with a new plugin and it doesn't have that undo redo, like, take Soothe, for instance. You ever use Soothe?
Yeah.
Soothe is awesome. Like, it's an amazing plugin, but it also, for me, it allows me to undo. I can undo multiple times. I could do 3 different moves and undo it and redo it and undo it and redo it. And A, B, C, no, let's go back to A, B, C, D. No, definitely not. Let's go back to B. Two undos away from there. I love that. And it bums me out when I have these plugins that I really love where they don't have that, that arrow back, arrow forward, whatever they call it on that specific plugin or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's reminiscent of having your hands on a piece of analog gear and clicking it, and you're like, click it a half a dB. Okay, let's go back to 0. Oh, let's click it a full dB. Now let's go back a half a dB. And you're going through that like process of enhancing something, even if it's it's like and mastering is a game of centimeters or millimeters. I mean, we're a game of hairs. Like the difference between perfect and imperfect, it's like, it could be a hair. You could be a hair from that. And I don't really know of another way. I'm totally open to learning a new process, but it seems very OCD, but you're just like muting it and unmuting it constantly. And is that thing giving me at least it step in the direction I want it to go? It might not be exactly the thing, but it's definitely helping some. It stays until we find that thing that's doing better or until we landed on the the sweet spot or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's so helpful for me, at least in my process, to be able to do that undo, redo is so helpful for me because I'm constantly, criticizing my own thing. Like, is 1.2 the place? Because I don't know, 1.8 sounds cool, and going between 1.2 and 1.8. And then, maybe it's actually like a combination of both. Like, let's create a new band. And, maybe it's a quarter dB at 1.2 and a half a dB at 1.8, or, and being able to have those surgical type of decisions and it be easy for me is important because my brain is thinking of 80 different things simultaneously, and it just serves my workflow really nicely.
What about level matching? Is that an important consideration when you're comparing plugin moves? And is there a method for making sure you don't get fooled by louder is better?
Yeah, I for sure, when I do referencing, a lot of clients, I know everybody works this way, but I get a loud pass or I get the rough or whatever, and I'll volume match for sure. I do volume matching because I want to have that accurate A/B reference. But that's how I saw it done when I was an observer of mastering.
Yeah.
When I wasn't doing any mastering, I was just watching. That's what I saw. And of course, I'm, privy to the phenomenon of thinking our brain thinks it's better because it's louder. And having been tricked a couple times, it's like, okay, yeah, I do need to level match the ref, know? And if the question is like, do I always have to beat the ref? That's sort of a different question. That's sort of like going back on that conversation you have with the client before the mastering session and talking about, sometimes I get references that are obscenely loud, like violently loud. And I'm just like, damn, like this guy can really make some can really make it loud. Is that what we're going for? I don't know if I can get it that loud. Like, I'll have that conversation. And I'm not trying to be the loudest guy out there. I've had, people say like, oh, like, also noticed that it wasn't as loud, and that's between me and my clients. It's like, we have that conversation. Everything we're doing is with intention here. We very easily could have made it louder. I'm aware of that. But that's like, those two things. Yeah, I'll always reference that, and I'll always have that conversation with the client because, they're hiring me. They're hiring a service from me, and I want to make it as loud as they want it.
Right, totally. Adam Audio is celebrating 25 years of researching, developing, and manufacturing industry-leading monitoring solutions in Berlin. To mark this milestone, our friends at Adam Audio are unveiling a special limited edition series of monitors that will look stunning in your studio and sound as awesome as your music. Introducing the Arctic White A4V and A7V series. Available for a limited time to pro and home studio owners like yourself, the clean, glossy white finish exudes a luxurious feel and will stand out in any studio or home audio system. Featuring the XART accelerated ribbon tweeter design and customizable speaker voicings, the Arctic White A4V and A7V retain the full specifications of the original design. Plus, with SonarWorks integration for automated room correction, you can fine-tune your monitors to your control room's acoustics. Adam Audio's commitment to delivering professional-grade, high-fidelity sound to studios worldwide has made these monitors a perfect fit for Grammy-winning producers in both pro and home studios for a quarter of a century. Now you can bring that beautiful high-fidelity sound to your own productions and make your studio look as cool as your music sounds. Don't miss out on the limited edition Arctic White A4V and A7V monitors, available for a short time with the standard extended 5-year warranty at adamaudio.com. Let me jump into some more questions about some of your records, if you want.
Yeah.
One of them was a hilarious tune called "It's Corn." And it sounds like it's
a
kids
big
singing
record.
and stuff. So tell us about that one.
Yeah, It's Corn.
It's got a picture of a kid just holding a corn on the cob.
Yeah, it's a very special record from last year. It was my good friends, the Gregory brothers, who have a YouTube channel and have put out records. I went to college with Michael Gregory. Shout out to Michael Gregory, one of my close brothers. And him and his brothers have a YouTube channel, and they did the Hide Your Kids, Hide Your Wife song, and they did countless other like viral songs. They're sort of honestly, they were sort of the first to do the auto-tune the news and songifying things that aren't supposed to be songs, and they take like funny interviews and turn them into compositions. And so I know I'm friends with them. I'm very close friends with them, and so I do their mastering. I don't even charge them. I don't even charge them for it. These are like my friends.
Right
but yeah, they did that record last year, and it went like super viral on TikTok, I guess. And yeah, it was just like really funny. Like they went on Fallon, and the kid, Tariq, the kid who was interviewed for that YouTube video, is like a saint. He's like the sweetest kid. He wants to use his famous song to help feed families in need. This kid is like raising money. I'm like getting goosebumps telling you about this kid. I mean, this is a bright young human, and to my knowledge, all the there's the money coming in for that is going into his college fund, and like it's just that was just a very special one, like a really feel good. I think it won a Webby or two or something.
Oh, that's like the awards for YouTube videos and stuff. That's right.
Yeah, that's like the YouTube Grammys, to my knowledge. I could be wrong about that, but I think that's what it is.
That's awesome. Well,
yeah.
All right. So let's see. So I'll jump to another one. How about this? So, Miseducation featuring Lil Wayne, Callboy, or Cowboy. It's got thumping low end. How for you is mixing and mastering hip hop different or the same from something more experimental like Disturbing Wildlife, Clever Devil?
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that one up. And I have a fascinating story about that project too. But the approach is the same for me. And my whole thing and this is a quote, and I can't tell you who originated this quote. I've heard it said thousands of times. I watch all the Mix with the Masters and all the Pure Mix and all the, I watch all this stuff, and you hear this phrase, serve the song. You hear it in passing like billions of times. Everyone said it. Who knows who said it first? But when I heard serve the song, 3 words, 3 syllables, serve the song. And the word serve is hidden in the word service. It's just like we're providing this service, we're serving the song.
I thought it was a tennis reference. Dang, I got it all wrong.
I know, right? and it's just so, it's like, it's so heavy, man. It's like the deepest quote you could serve the song. So the way I kind of translate serve the song, aside from like, here's a song, I'm serving it to you. No, I'm talking about this mix is 97% there. And I just need to get it 3% to 100. 100's the goal. Perfect is the goal, right? We're going for perfect, or whatever your definition of perfect is. That's what we want, 100%. And everyone's taste is different. I realize that. Preferences and stuff. But essentially, we want to hit 100%. We don't want to hit 101. We don't want to hit 105. We don't want to overcook it. Don't want to undercook it. If the song's 99% there, it just needs 1. If the song's 80% there, it needs 20. And I think that's a valuable skill set of being able to determine that, and it's rooted in having good communication with the client, but like knowing that this song only needs about 5 little shimmies and it's there. Like let's not mess this up,
5 little shimmies.
Yeah,
Have you
let's
heard the
not
story about
overdo it.
Bob Ludwig getting a session in and deciding that it was 100% there and it needed exactly 0% done to
No,
it?
but that's exactly what the value of hiring a mastering engineer who knows what he's doing, he or she, is like knowing that this thing is perfect as is, and I'm just going to do a fade out. I haven't heard that story, but I'd love to hear the story.
That's, I don't remember where
That's
it
the
came
story.
from. I remember
Right?
hearing it though.
Yeah, no,
That's
that's the thing. That's the value. That's like why you trust someone who does this every day, not somebody who's like, yeah, I sat in on a mastering session one time. I saw what the guy was doing. I could probably do that. Like you want someone who's experienced, who knows where perfect is and how to get you there, And if it's like we need to actually back this off a little. It's actually like a little too much. Are you hearing this? It's like sort of breaking up. Having those conversations, having like the finesse of talking to the mixer, maybe on a side channel without the client CC'd, to like, hey man, by the way, I just noticed this. I don't want to set off any alarms in the group chat. But if you want to like send me this file again, and you can keep it the same name if you want so that no one even knows, and we'll back this thing off, then we can get it to 100. Sometimes it's that kind of finessing.
Yeah.
And like reading the room and not like scaring anyone, thinking doubt, they already have enough of that.
Doubt is such a killer in the studio.
Yeah.
Like we're trying to build up our confidence and get to that point of confidence.
Vibe killer for sure. Vibe killer. But yeah, my approach is always kind of with that in mind. Where do I think 100% is based on these conversations that we've had? And how do we get there in as few steps as possible? And that is just because I don't want you to hear me. I want you to hear it and be like, I don't know what he did, but he definitely did something and I'm loving it. I don't want them to hear it and be like, oh, he's clearly doing a half a dB wide bell curve boost at 4K here. Like a trained ear could figure it out. I want a trained ear to be like, damn, I have no idea, but it's awesome. And
when you said that, I pictured a trained deer. So that was really quite an image in my mind right there too.
Well, and it's just knowing when to stay out of the way, knowing when to add that thing and when it's too much and when it's not enough. And the approach is still keeping the vocal in the forefront of my mind, or whatever maybe the vocal is in this case, if there's no vocal. What is the driving force of this song? Is it the rhythmic thing? Is it the, having the musical instinct to, kind of have a feel that this is very close or this is not close at all? And how do we assess this? And what's the best steps to move forward? That's my approach is very, minimal. I want to be transparent. I want you to hear your mix just better and not necessarily know what I did.
Well, let me ask this question. So another artist, Nick Vivid, the song Trainers, I think it was, just sounds awesome. Awesome. Really
Love
awesome.
Him.
Super punchy sample-based track that is, and my question around that is it sometimes challenging to address bringing out the presence in the vocal if you also have things like hi-hats and those same kind of sibilant range instruments in the mix, maybe off to the sides and stuff like that. And just in general, like talk about some of the places where like you're trying to address the vocal but not change too much something else. And is that actually a challenge that you have to address?
Yeah. Nick Vivid's records are like dance records too. I love him, by the way. Like, I'm so glad you brought him up.
It's great.
He's
Some really
such a
good sounding
great
stuff.
guy.
Awesome.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, check out he's awesome. And he makes it all himself. Like he builds his own gear and stuff like this.
Wow.
He's a circuit bender kind of guy.
That sounds fun.
Really far out, creative, sweet person. But his music, and you could even compare like hip hop records or dance records where you have a full, we have like this pulse throb like type rhythmic thing that's going on constantly throughout the song. And we just need to kind of like raise the vocal a little bit. And it's not as simple as like, let's go to like the mid side and let's just like boost the mid a little bit, or let's like cut the side a little bit, like try to make some room. It's sadly not that easy, because when you're doing that, you're bringing up everything in that channel or bringing down everything in that channel. So in the middle, for instance, vocals, drums, the two MVPs of that song. And I really can't jerk with the perception of the balance in that way. Very rarely is it that simple, but
so what are some ways to address that? If you can't, if you don't just boost the mids and the mid side EQ, what are some other things that can help pull a vocal out? It's again, is it what you were saying before, where you adjust other frequencies in other areas and then it has this or revealing effect?
Yeah, that, or surgically doing that, or like maybe you boost the middle, but you also simultaneously have to attenuate somewhere as well. It's that, hey, we're boosting here and we're cutting there thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's that. Another thing, this is just sitting out. A lot of people know about this, and I'm sure they've talked about it on your podcasts. Like the Oxford inflator is great.
Yeah.
I love the Oxford inflator for that. And sometimes it gives it like a little bit of, like a circuit kind of, like it's passing through a component that has like some vibe, kind of like an analog kind of saturation almost. That can help. I'm not big on like clippers, really. I'm not really big on like introducing saturation for the most part, but sometimes the inflator is nice.
When you use the inflator, do you remember some of the knobs and settings you mess around with?
Yeah. I have the clipping turned off most of the time, and I generally have the input at 0 and the output at 0, or maybe turn down. You can trim some, I could use their output to trim a little bit if I'm hitting too hard. But yeah, I keep the clipping turned off. I generally don't use the band split either. I usually it's just the green button is turned on, and it's in. And I think I'll anywhere from like 0% to like 20% on a more aggressive thing, but I really don't go past that. It's like adding. It's addicting, the inflator, you could get carried away quick.
I have, but it's a fun one. And it really does kind of inflate the lower mids and the upper bass in an interesting way. It sort of can fill out a track.
Exactly.
Which is funny because that sounds like I just described the muddy area, but it somehow
no, but it doesn't do that though. It doesn't like make it it just makes it better. I don't know. And I went and talked to them at AES this year, and I was like, hey, I'm pretty sure I'm using this wrong, but I love it. And they're like, no, you're not using it wrong. People do that too. And they're like, it's interesting you use it that way, but it's not wrong if it sounds good. So I appreciated them kind of co-signing me putting it like after the limiter, like.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I don't have clipping turned on generally. I'm not like too crazy about that. I also generally leave true peak limiting off on most stuff, even though there is great debate between the two.
Is that we were learning a little bit more about that with Harold LaRue on the show, and it seems Like perhaps the true peak limiting is a more of something that you might include later as part of the Apple delivery or something. We don't have to get too techie with it, but
Sure.
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, Apple specifically has like a set of, recommended specs or whatever you want to call it. And it's changed. I think it's changed, but I think the last time they put the papers out, it's been like a dB true peak limiting of headroom, so they're recommending a dB. In reality, I don't know. I ask everyone that I meet that trusts me enough to tell me their opinion, and everybody seems to do it differently for Apple Digital Masters. I always check it though through their loop thing that Apple gave us, the codec thing, just to hear what it's going to sound like we were talking about earlier, just so I can hear, what the normalization and their algorithm could make it sound like. And I've had good results with a dB of headroom for Apple Digital Masters.
That's good. That's smart that they give you some to listen through.
Yeah, I've done some at like minus 0.3, and it sounded great too. So,
well, we're probably getting a little above the Rockstar's head on this one too, as far as how often we're going to be worrying about that detail.
Fair.
But it's good to know that it's there and it's a thing. Do you feel like all the time that you've spent watching YouTube videos, trying out mix tricks, and tweaking version after version of your mixes has gotten you nowhere? Have you been looking for a simple, straightforward, step-by-step process for creating a pro mix that won't take years to learn? What if you could have a Grammy-winning mix engineer who understood all of your mixing struggles and could coach you through them? If you struggle with any of these questions, then the Ultimate Mixing Masterclass is just for you. Now you can discover the proven step-by-step mix system from Grammy-winning mixer Craig Alvin for consistently creating a pro-quality mix from your home studio that will sound amazing everywhere. Listen to this quote from one of our students, David. Quote, "Absolutely the most informative and helpful block of information and mentoring on the mixing process I've ever been a part of. That was like sitting behind a mix engineer for years, watching and picking up tips along the way, condensed into a 6 to 7 hour session." Close quote. Look, I'm so confident that the Ultimate Mixing Masterclass will take your mixes to the next level that if you can't get a killer mix within 30 days, I'll give you a full refund, no questions asked. So if you're ready to take your mixes to Grammy-winning quality, then go to ultimatemixingmasterclass.com and start now by checking out the free preview of the Ultimate Snare Mixing Trick, and I'll save a seat for you at the front row table at the Grammys. Let me ask you a question about this one. CJ Fly, Rude Boy, that track. Such a great old school kind of hip hop, big low end with bass. Yeah. Although I've talked about this before, it's like if you go on Spotify and you just find a playlist that's called like old school hip hop, and then you find a playlist that's called hip hop. It's almost like all the bass was an octave higher back then than it is now or something. It's like a totally different kind of low end. But this particular one reminded me of the old school thing, but it still sounded like huge with the low end and the bass. And my question to you, what are some of the ways that you get that to sound so controlled? And I mean, I literally wrote this question: how come it doesn't blow up my car speakers in a bad way? It was crankable in a good way, but didn't fart out my speakers,
Yeah, I would give credit to the producer on that. Like, I don't know that I could take credit for actually making it that Static Select. I'm pretty positive produced that.
All right, we'll have to see. Maybe we can get him to come on the show at some point.
No, but for what it's worth, like, I just kind of do my thing. Like I know for a fact I didn't do that much to that. I mean, this was a few years ago at this point, so I couldn't tell you what I did to a song this morning that I was mastering,
right?
Let alone 5 years ago. But I know I didn't do much, and I cannot take much credit, honestly.
Okay, so let me ask you some other low-end questions around that. Is it common to sculpt down in the low end? Is it common to do a complete high pass filter down low as part of the mastering, or is that a bad idea to get into? Because I've heard some really interesting discussions about that in the past.
Dude, me too. It's like highly debated. And a couple of guys that I have assisted, I've seen use high pass filters. And so early in my mastering career, I for sure used like the 12 dB slope filter at like 20 hertz or 18 hertz or whatever. It's catching a little. My opinion on that has changed quite a bit in my gaining experience. It would seem that bell curves seem to be yielding best results for me personally. And I know my mileage will vary. Someone listening to this is not mastering the same song that I'm mastering. I realize that.
Right.
And I realize there are songs where high pass is probably needed. In my experience, I haven't gotten the best results from shelves or high pass filters down there. I have gotten better results, me personally, with bells, usually moderately wide bells, I mean, obviously if it's like a very, like just this little thing is poking out and it's like this spike, at 72 hertz or something, it's like the kick or snare. Sometimes it's resonating at like that's a different situation, but we're talking about like, I've got a master, it's ready to print, but it's maybe at 102% because there's just a little too much bass. And I got to ease back off on the bass a little bit to get the track back to 100%. Like we've overshot our mark a little. It's just a little too bassy, but it's kind of like where we want it. I have gotten better results from bell curves, like medium to wide, and it's sort of vibe. It's like, it's keeping the vibe. It's keeping like the balance. And I'm not doing 3 dB. I'm doing a half a dB. I'm doing maybe multiple places with a half a dB. I'm not doing these like cavernous like EQ curves. Like if you looked at my Pro Q3, you're not going to see this Grand Canyon looking cut. It's like, it's minimal. It's little. And honestly, if that doesn't work, that's where my communication skills kind of come into play, where it's like, hey, is it possible for me to talk to this mixer? Is there a reason? Maybe there's no way out of this. Maybe there's no recalling. Maybe they printed it through the SSL and there's no going back,
Yeah.
Okay, I'll figure that out. But if they're like, nah, dude, actually I was on the fence, 9 times out of 10, you call the mixer and they're like, man, I'm glad you said something because I've been on the fence about it for a long time. And I like my loud pass, it didn't sound too much, but here it does, whatever the case. And they're usually, in my experience at least, totally more than welcoming of that, because it's like they have their own doubts about stuff too sometimes,
Yeah.
And they're like, dude, let me kick you out a new version real quick and, put a 0.1 in the file name. And it's like the same mix, but it just turned down a little. And then I don't have to do that thing to it. Sorry for the lengthy answer on that.
No, that's good. That's good. And just another reminder of how crucial it is to be careful how you have the dialogue back up the ladder or back down the ladder, I guess, wherever the analogy is, because you don't want to accidentally also throw your source creators, the people who are sending you this thing, into a state of doubt. Because like you said, you don't know. You might bring it up and they might say, oh, there's nothing I can do about that, blah, blah, blah. And now they're like, oh my gosh, is it not good?
Now I'm doubting. Yeah. Now they're doubting themselves and they came to you for this service.
Confidence.
And to feel comfortable and trust, we're earning their trust, and we're earning our pricing, like we want you to come here and trust that it's going to end up perfect.
Yeah.
After all the stuff you've done to get it to where it is now, and we're at the finish line, we just need to punch this in, and I've gotten very good at communicating and speaking the language and not offending and not triggering anyone, and just keeping it calm and easy, and just like, hey man, could we just turn the bass down like 0.4?
Yeah, it seems like the mastering stage is not the place for the engineer with snarky humor necessarily. Maybe.
Totally.
I mean, I have to take that back immediately because I could probably immediately think of 10 mastering engineers that have snarky humor. But, it's like in some stages of the creation thing, you can kind of goof around a lot and joke about things. You can make a joking reference to some other song, but other stages of making the record, it is a read the room thing. And it's like, you can't tell that same joke here because you're gonna send somebody spiraling into doubt. And I've noticed through my own projects working with mastering engineers that one of the services they provided that I only recognized in hindsight was, it was definitely a party, but for me it was just like a really good coffee, But it was like this experience of how great it was to sit back and just enjoy the record that we made on an attended session and hear it coming out of the big speakers. So that was very fulfilling. And then also the mastering engineers had a tendency to say something positive about the record. And it gave me this uplifting feeling about the whole project. And I don't think I think a good mastering engineer is going to make a suggestion if there's room for improvement. So it's not like a bullshit technique, but it is an important part of helping people cross that finish line of like, we're taking it to the 100%, like you said, and we're helping you leave with a sense of confidence that this is ready, and a sense of accomplishment because you just worked so hard to create this thing, and nice job, well done.
Exactly. And being able to big up your client in front of their client, like I consider my client the mixer or the producer, not the singer, or the band leader. Technically their name is what's going on Apple when it comes out. But like my client is one step back in the chain, and it's, I'm going to big up them in front of their client. And it's like, it's just good. It's just good it's just good vibes, it's like, hey, this sounds awesome. You guys should be really proud of this. And like, that is what I was talking about when I was an intern and I was like, unsure what do I want to be? I saw that and I just was like, I want to be a part of that. That looks cool. Very, very attractive to me as someone who likes to finish things and who likes good vibes over bad vibes and stressful vibes. And like, none, we're not done. We're nowhere close to done. We got to come back tomorrow and the next day and the next day. No, like, it's done. It's awesome. It sounds great. You did a great job. You did a great job. I had to do nothing, and that's like, that's the dream right there. That's like,
is that often a common expression for mastering? Even if you're doing something, you lean towards saying, "Oh man, I mean, it really sounded great."
I've seen it. Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah.
I've observed it. Like, I listen to podcasts. Like I watched. I've seen it. I think it's a good look. Yeah, I think it's a good look. Even if like you said, like sometimes it's just knowing that this is good as it is, and if I do anything, it's just maybe going to change it, and it doesn't need to be changed.
Right.
I'm very intentional in anything that I do. It has to pass the like, is this improving this truly test? And if it's not, I don't do that. And I will rather leave it be, and it just be what it is.
It's a lesson that I've learned in the production stage. It's a lesson that I learned in the mixing stage. And I think it's like a natural progression of getting better at this stuff as you learn to, well, part of it is you learn to recognize that your contribution is valuable, even if you're doing not that much, because it's at the beginning, you might feel inclined to want to do lots because you want to contribute.
Or show, hey, you're paying me $200. You got to be able to hear what I did. And that's not it, like that is not, sometimes just the job is just communicating with the client and just talking to them on the phone. Like, get them on the phone and have a chat with them. Find out where they're from and what their favorite sports team is. And like, it doesn't even have anything to do with the song, you know? And then you come back to the song and you're like, hey man, by the way, like, you feel good about the shape of this thing? Like, I would love it to be a little more. I got you. I can do that. I have room to do that. Or like, that's impossible, but here's how we do it. Take a step back, reprint this with this, and then send it to me again. And I got you, whatever the puzzle might be. Sometimes it's really based in communicating. Like,
well, so let's flip this the other way, which is sometimes you got to give that feedback back up the mixing chain. So what are some common mistakes that mixers make delivering to you for mastering? What are some lessons we can learn right now so that we do a better job of delivering?
Yeah, a lot of times, and I open this up to clients, I say, send me a mix before you finalize it. And you don't have to CC everybody. You can just privately send me the mix. I'll check it out. And most of the time I'm telling them, hey, could you DS this a little more? Could we use your de-esser a little more? And then we will use my de-esser a little less. I think that'll come out better on the mastering, Sometimes I might request like a vocal up version or a vocal down version. And more times than none, it's like, I'm not just using one or the other. It's like, I'm using the vocal up during the verse and I'm using the regular during the chorus, or I'm using the vocal up during the bridge and that's it, and I'm just doing two passes and I'm comping them together, with edits. So vocal level, vocal sibilance. If I know it's going to vinyl, I check the sides and make sure there's not like a ton of sub in the sides or like some weird panning, like panning your bass to the side, some dumb thing that only a vinyl expert would know about. And it's like, you don't want to wait till the end to tell them like, by the way, this is going to sound like on a vinyl record. So yeah, low end phase in general, I guess we could just say phasing issues in general. Sibilance probably the most in my case. I'm very sensitive to,
right, because you're really focused on the vocals and stuff.
Yeah, and also hi-hats and stuff that exist in the same area, or also just and then like we were talking about harmonics earlier, like harmonics of the piano. There are like some beautiful frequencies in the piano up there by 8K. Yeah. And like I don't necessarily want to have the de-esser where I would love to just see the de-esser just kind of blink a couple times at me and just so I know it's there. And that, like I don't want it just lighting up constantly because that in my experience is not the best sound.
Yeah.
So yeah, being able to isolate the vocal on the mix and just kind of gently saying like, this mix rules, but could you just de-ess it a hair more? Like there's a lot going on up there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it makes sense too. So just a raw vocal mic recorded, we might not be bothered by the sibilance of something that way. But once we start mixing and we compress the crap out of it, we notice in our own studios, producer and mixer, we're like, oh my gosh, this is like exaggerating all these things like S's and ch's and sh's and all that stuff. Or the letter T. I remember so many times with this one band, Living Things, we'd go back in and I'd have to clip the beginning of every single word that had a T, and I have to do a little mini crossfade across the T, and we'd like hand sculpt
automated
every
de-essing and stuff.
God, it was a nightmare. But like it makes sense because mastering is an extension of that dynamic compression potentially, and limiting, and so it just brings it out a little more potentially, and you're going to be aware of that. Whereas the mixer probably really appreciates you giving the feedback. The mixer might feel like, well, I wasn't catching that in my setup because I wasn't pushing it that far yet. But when you push it that little much further, now you're telling me it's sticking out again. So I should do a little more. For me, mixing this podcast is like that. I have to I really had to, boy, did I have to jump through hoops to teach myself to de-ess the shit out of our two voices. So by the time it shows up on an iPhone speaker down the road or in the car, it sounds right.
It's got that NPR sound or whatever, right? Like,
I guess, although I'll beat up NPR a little bit. I always liked what they did, but there was so many interviews I'd listened to on NPR in places where I'm like, good Lord, I'm having to turn the speakers up and down a lot in the car. Or like you turn it up to hear the voice and the resonance of some frequency of somebody's voice is just exploding the speakers. And I ended up not picking on NPR specifically, but just, talk radio, things like that.
It's not just that too. It's like plosives in music, plosives can have it. And I know they'll automate the high pass filter plosive trick, but like, how am I going to do that across the master? I don't know about the master, but isotope deplosive.
Totally. Isotope is great. I'll be using that on our voice right now. I'll do a P for you. Plosive. There you go. You probably didn't even hear it. Way to go.
That was a good one.
This podcast is proud to present Recording Studio Rockstars Academy. Are you ready to take your recording, mixing, and mastering to the next level and make your best record ever? Then visit the Academy to find the course that's right for you. Want to record killer drums in your home studio? Then check out Rockstars of Drums to learn how to record, edit, and mix pro-sounding drums with a professional Nashville session drummer in a Grammy-winning studio. Or if you're ready to start mastering your own records at home, then check out Rockstars of Mastering, where I walk you through exactly how I master my own records using nothing but plugins. Plus, I take you into a world-class mastering studio, Sterling Sound, to meet with Ryan Smith and hear how he professionally mastered my record, Skadoosh, for release to streaming platforms. That's the music you hear on this podcast, Rockstars. And if mixing is your focus, then check out my free mixing course, Mix Master Bundle, where I show you how to mix using stock and free plugins and Pro Tools. Plus, you get a look at how I recorded everything in my studio and multi-track downloads for you to practice mixing and even upload to your website if you want. Are you ready to make your best record ever? Then go to recordingstudiorockstars.com/academy to get started now. Well, let me jump to our closing question here. This is awesome to have you on the show. This one is hypothetical, and we're going to take the Wayback Studio machine, and you get to go back in time and find young Dan, young Dan Perry. And you say, I've come back to give you this one bit of advice. Here's the single most important thing you need to know if you really want to be a rock star of the studio one day. What advice do you want to go back and give yourself if you could?
Well, we talked about being detail-oriented, obviously. I'm sure people have said that before on here. Maybe leave that. Detail-oriented, obsessively detailed. Obsessive. I literally was fired from my very first real-life studio job because I gave off a vibe. And I probably was because I was 20 years old. But I wasn't detail oriented enough. And I was told if you're going to make it in this, you're going to need to be more detail oriented. And I said, challenge accepted. If that's what I need to know, roger that. I'm going to be the most detail oriented person you've ever met. So that is critical. Just everything from labeling to organizational time organization and mental health and physical health and, just balance and having your details, that is critically important. The other thing, and this is what I tell a lot of college students, and I hope this is helpful. And I swear there's value in this, so I'm going to say it. Getting your own clients is like giving you the keys to any studio in the world. You want to work at Electric Lady? Awesome. Let's go make a record at Electric Lady. You get the client, find out what it costs to make a record there, find out how much your time is, add those two numbers together and go to Electric Lady and make that record. You know what I mean? or like you want to go to the Hit Factory or wherever it is. It doesn't matter, Blackbird or wherever. You want to go there. Here's how you do it. You get your own clients. There is no studio, to my knowledge, it's so competitive. It's so gnarly. To my knowledge, I don't think studios are putting up like help wanted signs like, hey, come mix
really.
these songs for this sick band that is on their way to the Grammys. Like, if you know that, let me know. But to my knowledge, that doesn't exist. And so the only way to do that, to my knowledge, in my experience, is you have to get the clients yourself. You have to build your client book. That is crucial because, if you have clients, you have work, and you can go work in any studio you want. It does not matter. I mean,
it sounds like you like popping around from studio to studio, and then you've got your portable rig too. We didn't really talk about a home-based studio for you. Do you have one, or do you do just that, where you just go into work in different spaces when you want to?
Yeah, I'm based out of the house now, and but I still plan to work in studios in the city. Make no mistake. It's just in my situation, it's like it's budgetary. You know, it's like it's budgetary, and I want to be indie friendly. And I also want to be selective. So it's like it's hard to make a record in a big blue chip studio in Manhattan with a client that cannot afford it. This is just 1 + 1 =, it's like, this is just easy business math. It's like, if the band only has $1,000 to master their album, left in the budget, like, maybe it's not in the budget for us to go to like the sickest studio in Manhattan where we're only going to get 2 hours. It's like it's going to take us more than 2 hours to master this thing, y'all.
Right. But sometimes that can be like, the 2 hours might be the perfect window for the final mix listening, or like, an event where you want to be in a space and invite people to it. I know people who will mix in Atmos in their home studio, but then go book a fancier Atmos studio to play it back for the client on the bigger speakers or whatever too.
Oh yeah. And that's great. That's a great way to do the fold back or the listen back or whatever it's called. I've done that. So I've done that tons of times, where I mastered the album. Most studios charge differently for attended sessions. And I believe they do that because, well, I can't speak for everybody, but I think they do that because it takes longer when the client is there. It's like, it's extra. So they charge extra, it's sort of justified in that way. And so to avoid that, it's like, hey, hire me to master the album. I'm going to master the album when the window opens, like within your time frame. I'm going to get it done, within the next 3 weeks or whatever it is. And then on the 18th of February, why don't you come by the studio and we'll listen to it together? And I'll just put an hour on the thing, and we'll buy an hour from the studio. Like, we'll go, we could go to wherever you want to go. What studio you want to do? I'll call them up. I'll book an hour. We'll come, we'll listen to the album. You can take some pictures or whatever, because usually that's what they want. It's like content behind the scenes, and I'm, but that's a cool way to listen to the record and also create that personal connection that you want to create with your clients. It's just so crucial. But it's just not economic. Like, the math doesn't work. It's right. I can't recommend that to some of my clients because I want to give them the best service. I want their record to sound as good as possible, but like, they don't have enough money for us to do it there. And so we're going to do it here. And I'm able to be to choose my own rates, and I can schedule myself when I want. I can provide better return times, which is perceived even better service. I can do all these things I want to do quicker and at less expense. So the goal is maximum service at minimum cost. So how do I do that? I have a natural frugalness built into me. I have to keep my costs down. It's expensive to work in New York City. So if your clients are like, everybody throw in $200, we got to get this thing mastered, it's not realistic for me to like say, all right, yeah, well, let's go to, and I'm not even going to name the studio. I don't want to, embarrass anyone. It's like, it's just basic math. And so in my opinion, like the service that I want to provide my clients, the service value that I want my name being represented as, it's hard for me to provide that in the big studios.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to do that because the constrictions of those studios, it's like, hey, Dan, you can come in at 2:00, but you got to be out by 5 because there's somebody coming in at 5.
Right.
Totally. And that's already on the books. And also we need a deposit. And also, it's just like all this extra noise. And whereas like I could just open my computer and fix that for you right now.
Yeah.
And
totally.
you can listen to it in a place that you're comfortable in. And once it's all kind of crossed off, then let's go book an hour and like, yeah, bring a bottle and like bring your photographer and, we'll vibe out for an hour. That's a way more economical way of doing it in my experience.
That's cool. And I think you made that really, really clear. So that's good to
Cool.
hear. And thank you for kind of spelling that out. I think that'll be helpful for listeners who are debating, like what they can offer.
Yeah.
Going from home studio to big studio and all that. Let me pivot to this. For those who would like to connect with you and want to reach out, maybe they're ready to master their next record, where can the Rockstars find you? What's a good way to connect with you? And a reminder, Rockstars, of course, we will have links in the show notes too, and we have a Dan's playlist there, so you can go click through and listen to all these records. Highly recommend you check them out in the car. Go listen to the bass ones that kill in your car. Take them into the studio like I did. Find out where your comfort zone is on the speakers, where you can feel that sub on your feet, and see what you think, and get that experience. But how should they reach out to you?
Man, thank you so much. You are the man. I appreciate this. I really only exist on Instagram, social media wise. Like I have an Instagram at Dr. Millice, spelled out DoctorMillice.
Awesome.
And that's my social media situation. I can't pause, and I'm lousy at it. So I would ask if you have an inquiry, I would love for you to do it through the website, contact forum or contact page. Contact form, I guess you call it.
Yeah, and that's danmillicemastering.com.
Yeah. And you'll see it should be relatively frictionless, but email is the best way to reach out to me. Also, I post my phone number. Like I totally do not mind someone calling me. And I'm more of a phone talker than a texter. I mean, I'm capable of texting, obviously. And some people prefer not to talk on the phone, and I understand. That's totally okay. But give me a call. Like, let's talk. I'm not great at catching DMs. I just found this page on the DMs where you don't even see them. And there's like a whole list of DMs that I've never responded to because half of it's robots. But there's a handful of humans that got shuffled in there. And I'm mortified because I haven't replied.
Yeah, so I get those too through all the socials, Facebook and stuff like that. And I'll come back.
I can't possibly.
A year later, it's like, man, sorry, I missed this.
Yeah, like, thanks for wishing me a happy birthday 3 years ago.
Right.
But don't DM me. I mean, you could try, but I can't guarantee a prompt response. But I can guarantee a very prompt response if you email me or just go through my website.
Okay, awesome. Well, Dan, thank you so much for joining us in Recording Studio Rockstars. Rockstars, thanks for listening. It was great to meet you, dude.
Man, likewise. I'm so grateful for this, Liz. Thank you, man. Seriously.
You're welcome. Thanks for hanging with us, and we'll see you around the studio, dude. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, then please share this episode with your friends on social media and leave a rating and review on iTunes to help the podcast reach more rock stars like yourself. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to rsrockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. And remember to hit the subscribe button to keep up with weekly episodes. And if you're ready to make your best record ever now, then head over to Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, where you can start with my free course at mixmasterbundle.com. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks for being a rock star. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music. Recording Studio Rockstars would like to give a big thank you to our awesome sponsors who help make this episode possible: Grace Design, Atom Audio, Native Instruments, and Isotope. And remember, at isotope.com and nativeinstruments.com, use the coupon code ROCK10 for 10% off any plug-in purchase. If you enjoyed Recording Studio Rockstars, please check out our sponsors using the links in our show notes, because it's a great way to help support this show. These are all things I highly recommend for your studio. They're going to help you make your best record ever. I would also like to thank our fantastic team here at Recording Studio Rockstars: Vlad Weselchenko, Braden Stremming, and Liz Hulitskaya. Thanks so much for listening, Rockstars, and we'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.